wanted to share something that I ran across. Still going through my computer, finding all kinds of things. This is a book that I wrote after my 9/11 experience, which I've talked about before. I'm not going to go into that right now. I did not publish this book. I circle back to it every now and again and think maybe I should, but at the moment I'm just going to leave it. But I did want to share one bit of it. The title of the book, as I wrote it, just so you can have some context, was Holy Terror: The Inner Terrorist, Soul Restoration, and the Healing of Humanity. And then the other subtitle is From What I Saw in Atta's Eyes to Where the World Begins Again. And I came across this one excerpt that I wanted to share with you. It's from a section where I'm describing my inner work and the personal aftermath of what I was dealing with based on my own experience. And this section, I'm really going into talking about the inner terrorist and the opportunity that comes from, or that came from, with my own personal experience from that world event, and that I believe also comes from any time we encounter any sort of, really any kind of terror in our lives, which can include any betrayal, any significant loss, any sort of self-deception, delusion, illusion. So this is the segment I want to share with you. And it's, for context, I'm talking a bit about how I came face to face with this sort of inner part of me that wasn't like my typical psychological parts. It was more complex than that. There was a spiritual aspect to it, and it was ethereal and almost otherworldly, but in a sort of scary kind of way to me personally when I encountered this. So I'm just going to read you the excerpt and then I'll talk a little bit about it. She took shape and form and grew in power the more she felt disowned and devalued. She grew into a monster masquerading as a merry maiden. She dictated my thoughts, clouding soul's truth. Over time, her poison seeped into my heart like an invisible fog that began to suffocate me silently. I knew something was wrong, off, and yet she darted about with dizzying speed, a dark magician without regard for the consequence of her reckless romp. She stole my birthright. Just when I was reaching for joyful contribution, she slipped in unaware, lassoing me and leading me quietly down a path that took me further and further from myself. In the days of a dream that had become an unfolding parade of days indistinguishable, I could not see her apart from me. Lost to myself, I did not even know of her. And so I found myself there, lost in a forest full of trees that seemed to block me, and I heard her snickering from above or within or wherever she was, and all at once I saw her for who she was, a fairy whose flippant frivolity was a mask for flaming fear. I knew this intuitive hunch to be correct when the moment the thought arose within me, I felt her amp up the shenanigans, seemingly try to throw me off her course as she emitted the scent of alarm, even as she traipsed through a field of wildflower thoughts. So that's where I'm going to end there's more, but I'm going to end the excerpt. Sorry, the bugs are just crazy out here. I should have done this inside. I'll finish though. So it was a very complex layer that I wanted to just share with you today, just as a, kind of marker, because sometimes our healing, so sometimes it's fairly obvious when we do the inner work, the typical shadow work or healing parts that we haven't integrated yet, particularly based on, childhood trauma and the more traditional relationship damage from all kinds of relationships or situations in terms of our connection with other people, whether that's individually, one-on-one, or within groups. But what I came across, in my own healing, this layer of healing anyway, which was really about facing my own terror that did have ties to the childhood trauma, and it also had ties to this relationship layer I'm speaking about. But then there was this other aspect that I came across, and this like strange, like I didn't understand it. It's like this thing appeared in me. And this was before I really had any context for or any awareness, really, at least in terms of resources, like things I had run across like on the internet or healing books or that sort of thing. Like it was this layer that was very very energetic and spiritual in nature, but in a way that I just couldn't make sense of it. This thing would like appear, and I'm like, what is this? Is it me? Is it not me? And, you know, like actually, I will say to this day, that part I'm writing about, it's kind of puzzling to me. And my view has shifted a bit. But I wanted to share this because I really, in my recent experience here, now I'm in 2026, so 25 years later, and, you know, I'm in quite a different space. Yeah, I'm going to get lost if I talk too much about it. But like the short version of it is the book that I wrote based on the 9/11 experience in my own juncture I was at in my own healing journey. I had just gotten to a place coming out of what had happened in 97 through 99, which were definitely the crisis years. And I was just coming out of it. And then this encounter happened and 9/11 happened days later. And I was just since spiraling into a depth that literally lasted 3 years. And it was like so stunning to me. I'm intrigued that the birds are doing what they're doing right now. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not, but it was stunning to me because I've always been quite aware of, even when I haven't adhered to it, of the, you know, sort of spiritual plan, I guess, if you will. And when I say that, the cosmic, you know, nature of my soul's journey here and what is generally speaking unfolding for humanity. And that this was like a gash. The entire thing in my own journey was a gash. In my own timeline, it was like something was hijacked in the story of our, you know, world, the United States in particular. It was like everything was like, what happened? And this is how this part of me that in my healing afterward came into my awareness. You know, there was, you know, what I call the 3 years of darkness for me that were 2001 to 2004. And so I began writing about this thing that I wasn't even sure, is this me? Is this not me? And like my view right now is it wasn't me. It was not me. But it was. You could call it an energetic entity. You could call it a thought form, although it was more alive than that. And I don't have the, you know, the knowledge or capacity to speak intelligently about what it was. You know, I'm sure somebody out there, you know, listening to me is like, oh, say this, you know, so definitely seek out, if you have anything like this, seek out healing methodologies that resonate for you. And in my own healing work, I actually have encountered similar things with when I've been working with individuals. I don't have a lot of experience in this, but it's very clear at times that what is energetically coming in at somebody, it is not an unhealed childhood wound. It is something that is other than. It's not the individual. And it's hard to discern sometimes. So back to my own experience with this part of me, you know, like, as I said in that first sentence, she took shape and form and grew in power the more she felt disowned and devalued. And in this sense, I feel that there's value when there is something like this at play, because whatever it was, and I do believe it was an outside energy. I don't know. Did it come because somebody directed it at me? Did it come from my own experience in terms of that specific event, or the events that were at play in my own personal life shortly after that time, which were continued to be quite have an element anyway of darkness and I don't want to say too much, but energy directed at me that I wasn't even aware of at the time. I haven't been aware of it until more recently, that what probably was actually happening was multifaceted, and part of it was things being directed at me intentionally by certain individuals, and then otherwise just more in that sort of, like, I guess people call it the evil eye, things, negative energy, just put out there. But whatever it was, right? Whatever that thing was that would kind of hijack me internally, and it didn't make any sense. It was like, this is not me, but it was like there, and I just didn't have the capacity. But whatever it was, that first sentence there, it was how it was able to attach was that there was something in me that was energetically aligned with whatever that was, that did still feel devalued and disowned. And when I came across this today, the whole reason I'm sharing this with you is when I came across it today, I just an awareness that I hadn't had before, which has to do with this idea that while I was not aware of what that thing was that was devalued or disowned within me, I wasn't able at that juncture in my journey to discern what that was. But one thing I did that I see now, I didn't even see it when I was writing about this, back, I think I wrote this in 2014 and 15. I wrote the book about the experience, and I shared a portion of that. But, again, I may share it in the future, but one thing that is obvious to me now is the thing that I was doing at the time. These bugs were, it's probably one up my nose. The thing I was doing at the time was I was doing my art in terms of like the soul essence art practice that I do. And I can see when I look back that energetically there was some progress made, because I did begin to hone in on this underlying, it's heavy, this underlying deep desire I had to speak, to let it out. Now I had let out the truth in terms of the words of some of the message that was living inside of me. I'd published things, I'd written things, I had spoken one-on-one to specific individuals in my life about them. But the deepest desire in me that I didn't even see at the time was this thing that had been hijacked in the first place, which was what was the path that was meant for me, which was to express the fullness of the spiritual truths that I do hold in me, and to do so with some measure of assurance that I was held. And somehow, I hope this is making sense, because it's kind of complex in what was happening in me, but somehow my capacity to believe that, I guess you could say my faith. I don't think I ever lost my faith in terms of life and spirit holding me, God and the angels protecting me. But somehow I lost the feeling of it. And the loss of the feeling of it, the assurance, and combined with this gaping hole that was mirroring in me, this gaping hole in me that was mirroring what had actually happened, and this experience of literally having been taken over. Now, I want to be clear, I was not like demonically possessed. This wasn't an all the time occurrence. It was just I would notice this energy, and it would war with my better angels, it would be at war. And so it was this inner conflict that was like running all the time, and this like sneaky little ha ha ha, like pretending that something else was in charge of me. And again, not completely. But that's why I want to share this, because this is what I think is overlooked sometimes. You hear a lot about the huge things, right? The black magic that's done. And so ways to address that, or the more deliberate kinds of things. But there's a complexity to what energetically can happen to us if we're not devoted to a path of healing and self-love and self-compassion. And what ultimately allowed me to get to the place where finally I could begin to hear that, recognize that strain of energy within me, but not give it any power anymore, was not just simply like identifying it and denying it. And it also was not identifying it and saying, oh, sure, here you go. Here's some more of my energy, because it was neither in this case. Now, again, this is very different than integrating a childhood wound. It's very complex. And I don't know if anybody's watching this video and they have good, the better language for it, feel free to leave a comment or something. But what did assist me was being present to it and allowing myself, when it would rise up within me or interject itself in subtle ways, usually in the background. Like, it's not like it came out and took over me. Again, it wasn't a possession or anything like that, but it was something that did try very much to supersede, rise above what was most true in me. And so the work that allowed me to ultimately regain enough strength to then bring forth what was truer began really when this art practice, this daily kind of doodling thing that I did, the soul essence art, moved the energy, and journaling certainly helped, and dream work also. But there was, give me a sec to try to find a way to express this. There was a patience that was required, where I had to kind of let go, acknowledge, let go, but understand, always come back to my center, which was very weak in those years. But come back to my center in any way that I could. And so in those days, it was, generally speaking, the one person who at the time I felt was safe, and my creative expression, the love that I expressed to the best of my ability in those years to my child, and my faith in God and life. And I had to keep coming back to those again and again and again and again, and be devoted to stay present in spite of this like thing that I could have like on any given day, had I made a different choice, I could have just forfeited everything to that. And I've seen this in other people, where they may not tell me directly, but I can feel it, that they've done that. And the sad part of it is that thing that they have surrendered themselves to wasn't even them. It wasn't. And I think that this is the next, I might sit with this a bit more and see if I can get any more clarity, or maybe do some research. Not my forte, but it would probably be helpful if I'm going to talk about it. And I just really wanted to share it because I felt like there's something there for all of us to be aware of, because we do live in a world that is by its very nature energetic. And if we don't stay connected to ourselves and to some practice that, whether it's, creative, spiritual, meditation, all of those things that can root us in the whole of who we are, whatever that looks like in the moment. And trust me, I have had years like these years I'm talking about where I was hanging on by the thinnest of threads. And the other thing that I want to say about this particular personal experience was when this was all happening and this was running in the background and I was aware, and I didn't, this part I read to you was in the book I wrote in 2015, but I think I was very much journaling about this back in 2002, 2003. Again, very difficult time for me. But the stakes are very high for individuals, for groups, for our world. And this is something that we have to get a handle on. And the easiest, the fastest way to ensure that we are beginning to protect ourselves is, again, to find some practice and to devote yourself to that practice. And to remind yourself, and this is something, literally, I was reminding myself of this every day and I didn't believe it. In at least portions, not the whole 3 years or whatever, but portions of that time, I would write in my journal. I would do the creative soul essence art practice, and I would write some affirmation or something probably back then, and you are loved, and somehow, God is watching over you and you're held. And some days I believed it and some days I didn't, but I wrote it every day. And eventually I got strong enough to discern that this was not me, this thing that kept rearing its ugly head. It was not me. And it wasn't going to be the solution to reject it either. I had to sit with it. I had to stay with it. I had to wrestle with it. It reminds me of like in the Bible, in the Old Testament, where Jacob is wrestling with the angel. I think that's what we have to do sometimes. We've got to wrestle with things. So, okay. I'm probably just at this point going over and over in circles. But that's how this was. This experience was like that. And that's the point, really, is that we have to be willing to not know things. It's not, as much as I love Soul Simple, the Soul Simple life and the approach, that approach to life, there are certainly complexities to our healing journey. So this was just a marker. I may come back to this in another video. I'll probably share it as a part of some healing journey in the future. And the other thing I want to mention is the healing that I came to in terms of my own, what healed my soul deeply was me essentially doing what I'm here to do, which I do now in terms of the earth anyway, and occasionally with people, which is to allow my soul song to move through me and to heal the land and to heal my own soul, and at times to offer that to others. And that essentially was me expressing my own gift, even though I was terrified to do that. Even when I was by myself, like in nature, like way far from people, I would still be terrified to do it. Like, what? Like the animals are going to judge me? I don't know. It made no sense. But that, as I got stronger, even though that this energy was still present for a while, the more I did that, in spite of my terror, the more that I faced the holy terror, the inner terrorist, which this was a part of that. This little this energy I encountered that I wrote about was a part of that for me. And it may look different for you, you know, it may be extreme. I've seen it manifest in people in terms of extreme actual terror of things, of action or people or situations or phobias. There's a lot of things it can show up as. But ultimately, the path to the healing of humanity is us healing ourselves, our own, the terror that's within us. And another thing I'll just share real quick, this isn't in this video here, but is my truth, transforming terror to truth. The truth map system is in my book, All Systems Go, and there are 8 sacred movements to do that. Someday, you guys, I'll get it organized. I'm working on it. Okay, take care. Thanks. Bye.